What if Pokemon Gold was rebuilt as a fully explorable 3D voxel world? Well, recently I played Yellow version running on the Gen 1 Recomp app and using a special mod that transformed my old childhood experience into a mind-blowing 3D voxel world. Now stay with me, because to give you some context, I always wanted to remake the Gen 2 version, which is Gold and Silver, and actually I did start a project to do just that back in December of 2025. While playing Yellow version in that oh so beautiful voxel landscape, it reignited my inspiration and motivation to continue my Gen 2 voxel remake. Originally I wanted to wait until I'd fully rebuilt all of the Johto region and game mechanics before making this video, but well, you'd be waiting a while for this content. Instead, this will be the first part of a multi-part series where I rebuild Pokemon Gold. On that note, if seeing Pokemon Gold rebuilt like this is your kind of thing, consider subscribing, as it really helps this video in the old YouTube algorithm. I'll also be making more videos like this, as well as game analysis and devlogs of my own commercial releases. Thank you so much, and with that, let's get started. My goal for this project was to keep that old school art design and ambience of Gold and Silver while giving it my own voxel aesthetic. Basically, I really wanted to re-experience the feeling I first had when playing Pokemon Gold on my Game Boy Color at 11 years of age. The first thing I did after creating the project in Unity was go to my good old friend Spriter's resource to get the Overworld map, as well as all of the original sprites I can use for rebuilding Pokemon Gold in that voxel art style. And if you happen to be already subscribed to the channel, you may recall I used a similar approach in my 3D remake of the Pokemon trading card game for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, except that I didn't use that voxel approach. Once I had everything I needed, the first thing I did was jump into MagicaVoxel and imported the original player sprite. And that was my typical approach for remaking all the models in the game. And I have to say, it wasn't the easiest method, as you have to use some creativity and your own perspective of how the player should look on the Z-axis, since the originals were 2D games and naturally built on a two-dimensional plane. So it was safe to say that the front and back of most of the models were the hardest to do, but I'm quite happy with how Gold turned out. For the Overworld, I naturally started out with where the player begins his journey, and that's New Barktown. Beginning with the houses, and this was a lot easier to do than the players, since the houses had a much simpler shape to work with. Like, we knew that our rival was looking through a window at Professor Elm's lab, so it was easy to assume we could add a window at the side of this building and many of the other buildings. Fun fact which you probably noticed, but each house in New Barktown had the same design with just differences in sizes. For example, both Elm's and Gold's homes had bigger roofs, so you could assume that they were two-story homes, whereas the other two had a shorter roof pointing to a single floor home. And another fun fact is that each town had a different roof color with slight differences in design too. I did the same for the main trees and the signs, and once I was done, I started placing them onto the Overworld map and had some additional fun making Gold look like a giant in New Barktown. Now, for blocking out the landscape, I used Pro Builder, which allowed me to structure the different segments of the overworld like the towns and various routes. Additionally, using Pro Builder with the Overworld map as the sprite allowed me to correctly manage the various elevations in the terrain. Next, I made the grass, and originally I designed a full 3D voxel sprite to use for each piece of grass, but quickly realized having a lot of 3D grass on the terrain would eventually blow up my laptop. So I opted instead for cleaning up the sprite in Krita and just using two quads. I then placed them in the different patches of grass on the 2D map, and also added a cool wind effect to start bringing the world to life. And I have to say, I'm quite happy with how it turned out. Now, if you recall, Route 29 had some destructible trees we could cut down, so I started working on those, and I continued placing the main trees along the map, while calculating for ground elevation based on where the jumpable ledges were. Now, if you recall from my game Digigears, I'm using the Toonie Colors Pro 2 shader to give the voxel look a bit more of a kick in terms of the art style, and I played around with the shader for this project as well. It fits nicely with the voxel look, and it really gives the game an aesthetic that I always wanted to see in a lot of the Pokemon games being released today, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Once the majority of Route 29 was finished, I decided to take a break from building out the overworld and think about what the gameplay was going to look like. Since up until now, all we really focused on was the art direction and the level design, I began to think about how the gameplay was going to work, and be able to catch a Pokemon that was moving around freely in the wild. Now, I know this isn't completely truthful to the original games, but I can't help myself. As a game developer, I love to experiment, and I want to see what the game would look like if we added this mechanic into that old school design. So let me know if you like that by commenting below. Now, I'm not at that stage yet, since I do need the voxel meshes the player will cycle through when he goes into the sneak and throw stance positions, and all of the different Pokemon animations, as well as programming all of the gameplay mechanics. So what did I do next? Well, naturally I started with the fun part and made a Cyndaquil with all its beautiful walk cycles and my particular favorite animation. I really love how Cyndaquil turned out, and I can't tell you guys enough how excited I am to make the rest of the Pokemon voxels. I also went ahead and made the Pokeball Gold will use and started on his throw animations. To keep the momentum going, I resumed working on the Overworld, and built out the houses for Cherry Grove City. These were slightly different in design, as both the Pokemon Center and Pokemart had pink bricks as part of their facade, while the regular houses had more of a white or light brown colour. I also added the signs for the Pokemart and Pokemon Center. If you recall, Pokemon Gold and Silver were also the first Pokemon games to introduce the day and night cycle, which I remember just having my mind blown as a child when I first experienced the game mechanic. Especially when I evolved my first Umbreon, that feeling of grinding at the barbers, switching between the brothers until finally it happened. Like the video if you were an Umbreon trainer like me, and actually like it if you preferred Espeon too, and tell me in the comments which one's your favorite. Well, at least we all know what Pokemon I'm going to make next in MagicaVoxel. Back on point, to reflect the game, I experimented with some day and night skyboxes, and I'm already getting excited at the thought of how cool this is going to look once I have the day and night cycle programmed in. Next, I added my Cinemachine third-person controller that I'd configured for the player in my Pokemon TCG remake, and played around with the settings until they started to feel right. That is as far as I've gotten with this project. Once I completed the buildings in Cherry Grove, I really wanted to experience how it felt to explore the Johto region from a third-person perspective. And with only having the walking mechanics implemented, I already couldn't wait for my first Pokemon encounter. Wait a minute, what was that?
Who's that Pokemon?
New Bark Town and most of Route 29 are now explorable, Cherry Grove is beginning to take shape, and Cyndaquil has officially become the first Pokemon brought into this voxel version of Gold and Silver. Now, although this is still very early stages of development, I'm really loving how the Johto region is starting to take shape, and I'm quite excited to add in the Pokemon capture and not to mention the trainer battle mechanics. As I explained earlier, this is only the first part of a multi-part series, so if you're excited and want to see the game come to fruition, please let me know by commenting, liking, subscribing, all that good stuff, so the video gets some visibility and support on the YouTube algorithm. I'd also like to get your feedback so far, and feel free to share any ideas or features you'd like to see in the game. Naturally, because this is a Nintendo game, I won't be able to release it commercially, nor was I planning to in any way, just to cover myself with the Nintendo suits. But given that there are so many cool fan-made projects and games already out there, I will explore and see if I can release this for free when it's ready and if it gets enough support and momentum. I want to thank you for your time, and if you watched this video all the way to the end, I'm insanely grateful. As always, drink some coffee, code, and I'll catch you in the next one.